Today we're getting into a piece of legislation that's causing, well, quite a stir. Washington, Wall Street, Silicon Valley, everyone's talking about it.
Definitely seeing that.
You've got Donald Trump calling it the one big beautiful bill. Love it.
Enthusiastic.
But then, flip side, you have Elon Musk basically saying it's an insane job-killing disaster.
Yeah, I mean, you can't get much further apart than that, can you?
Exactly. That's a massive gap. So our mission today, for you listening, is really to cut through all that noise.
Get past the headlines.
Right. We want to break down what's actually inside this thing. How does it affect you personally as a taxpayer? Why is Elon Musk, revolting so publicly?
And the bigger picture too, right? The economy, globally even.
Yes, exactly. The broader implications. We want to give you the key nuggets, the stuff you really need to know without drowning you in jargon.
It's quite something seeing two figures like that, Trump and Musk, with such completely opposite takes. It screams complexity, doesn't it?
It really does. Tells you there are probably some very different philosophies clashing here.
Underlying values, maybe?
Yeah. So, this bill, it's being framed as like the sequel to Trump's 2017 tax reform, only bigger, bolder, more controversial.
That's the narrative, yeah.
So let's get into it. In plain English, what are the main pieces? What makes this big, beautiful bill tick, and why all the strong feelings?
Okay, well, the core features are interesting. It's a deliberate mix, almost feels like a strategic paradox. So first, it makes those 2017 tax cuts permanent, both for individuals and corporations. That's a big signal.
Okay, locking those in long term.
Right. Then you get these very specific new deductions, things like tips, student savings accounts, even loans for U.S.-made cars, little sweeteners maybe.
Specific, yeah. And the child tax credit.
A slight expansion there, not huge, but it's in the mix.
Okay. But there's another side to it, isn't there? The cuts.
Ah, yes. And this is where it gets really contentious. Big cuts to federal spending. We're talking major impacts on programs like Medicaid and food aid, SNAP.
So trimming the safety net, essentially.
That's how many see it. And maybe the biggest shock for some sectors, it completely gets rid of the green energy tax incentives.
Including EV credits.
Yep. Existing EV credits are gone. The ones meant to make electric cars more affordable for people, that's a major shift.
Wow. Okay, so strategic paradox seems like the right term. It's giving with one hand, taking with the other, maybe.
You could definitely see it that way. It's certainly not a simple tax cut bill.
So for you listening right now, what does this actually mean day to day? How does this translate into your wallet, your budget?
Right, the personal impact. Stepping back. Look, for a lot of middle-income taxpayers, you might genuinely see a little bit more in your paycheck.
Like how much?
Maybe $50, $60 a month, something like that. Sounds okay on its own, right?
Sure, yeah.
But, and this is the huge but for the people relying on Medicaid or SNAP, we're talking over 10 million people potentially losing coverage or support.
10 million. That's significant.
It's a massive number. So that small gain for some comes alongside a really substantial loss for others. It's not evenly distributed at all.
Okay. And what about, say, young families saving for college, childcare?
The benefits there are described as, well, modest, almost token, some might say. And you have the potential worry of rising healthcare costs possibly wiping out any small gain anyway.
So kind of a wash, maybe.
Could be. And then you look at the top end, the wealthiest 1%. They get more tax relief from this than any other group. It's disproportionately skewed.
Do we have numbers on that?
Yeah.
Rough estimates.
Yeah, economists have run projections. The top 20% of earners, they could gain something like $5,700 a year on average.
Okay. And the bottom?
The bottom 20%. They might actually lose about $700 a year in net benefits once you factor in the spending cuts and everything else.
Wow. So much for every American wins.
Exactly. That narrative really gets challenged by the data. Some Americans clearly win a lot more than others. Some actually lose out.
Right. Okay, that really paints a different picture. Now, speaking of challenges, Elon Musk, he's known for shaking things up politically.
He certainly is.
And he has really come out swinging against this bill, calling it an abomination, even threatening to start his own political party if it passes.
Yeah, that threat raised a lot of eyebrows.
I'll bet. So what's driving that? Why is this billionaire fighting this particular bill so hard?
Well, it seems to come down to three main things, and they're kind of linked. First, and maybe most obviously, it hits his business. Tesla.
The EV credits, right.
Exactly. Killing those EV and clean energy credits, that's like pulling the rug out from under Tesla and the whole clean tech industry just as it's really taking off. It's a direct threat.
Okay. Makes sense from his perspective. What else?
Second, the debt.
Yeah.
He's apparently very concerned, and a lot of economists are too, about the projection that this adds, what, $2.8 trillion to the national debt over 10 years?
2.8 trillion. Yeah, that's a big number.
He sees that as fiscally reckless, just piling on debt without a clear payoff.
Okay. Threat to his industry, concern about debt. What's the third reason?
The third part is his argument about the future. He says the bill rewards industries of the past. He points fingers at oil and gas.
Mm-hmm.
While at the same time, it guts funding and incentives for innovation, for job creation in the sectors he sees as the future, like clean energy, tech.
Propping up old industries, kneecapping new ones.
That's his argument. And he's putting his money where his mouth is. He's actively funding primary challengers against Republicans who voted yes.
Really? Trying to unseat them.
Yep. That's a pretty direct political intervention, definitely causing some waves within the GOP.
Yeah, I can imagine that's bold. Okay, so let's zoom out a bit then. We've talked individuals, we've talked Musk, corporations. What about the strategic view, the global implications? What's the bigger picture here for America on the world stage?
Right. From a global strategist's viewpoint, this bill sends some, let's say, concerning signals.
Okay, like what?
Well, first, America's position in the green economy race. By ditching these green incentives, the U.S. basically weakens its own standing.
You mean compared to China, Europe?
Exactly. China and the EU are pouring money into green tech. This bill could potentially hand them a huge advantage, letting them pull further ahead in industries that are likely to dominate the future economy. It's not just domestic policy, it affects global competitiveness.
That's a big strategic risk.
It could be. Second, there's that debt issue again. Adding trillions more narrows future options.
How so?
Well, think about it. What if there's another big recession? Or a major climate disaster requires huge government spending? If you've already got a ballooning debt, your flexibility to respond effectively is limited. It ties the government's hands down the road.
Right. Less room to maneuver in a crisis.
Precisely. And third, political polarization. It's widely expected this will just pour fuel on that fire.
Because of the inequality,
Yeah.
benefiting the rich.
Yeah, when you have policies that so clearly benefit the elite while, squeezing working class programs like SNAP or Medicaid, it tends to generate backlash. You could see more populist anger, maybe from both the left and the right.
So more division, potentially.
That's the fear. So when you look at all these wider implications, the bill starts to feel less like a carefully planned long-term growth strategy.
And more like
a short-term sugar rush. You get maybe a quick boost, but with potential long-term costs and instability.
a short-term sugar rush. That's a really vivid way to put it.
Yeah.
Okay, so boiling it all down, what are the chances? Will Trump's big, beautiful bill, as he calls it, actually become law?
That's the multi-trillion-dollar question, isn't it? It really seems to hang on public pressure now, and whether powerful voices like Musk can actually mobilize enough opposition to stop it.
So it's not a done deal.
Not necessarily. It's
Right.
definitely a high-stakes fight, and everyone's watching very closely.
Okay. So for you listening, let's try and pull out 3 key takeaways from this whole deep dive. What should you really remember?
Good idea.
First, I think it's clear. This is a big win for the wealthy. The numbers seem pretty undeniable there.
Agreed. The benefits are heavily skewed towards the top.
Second, it's a gamble for the economy. A real gamble, especially with that huge projected increase in national debt. There are significant risks involved.
Yeah, the sugar rush versus long-term stability issue, that's central.
And third, this isn't just about taxes and spending, is it? It's really a flashpoint. It represents a bigger fight over America's future.
Absolutely. It's like a battleground for competing visions. Fossil fuels versus clean energy, maybe nationalism versus globalism, certainly populism versus plutocracy, you could say.
Big fundamental questions wrapped up in this one bill.
Definitely.
So maybe the final thought to leave you with, something to chew on after listening.
Given everything we've unpacked, what does this bill, whether it passes or fails, really signal about the direction the country might be heading? And maybe more importantly, what kind of future are we actually choosing to invest in?